She could have taken millions, but what she chose instead changed his life forever. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Edward Kane, a reclusive billionaire known more for his ruthless business acumen than any trace of kindness, deliberately left the door to his private office ajar and the massive safe inside wide open. Why? To test her, the maid, the girl who dusted his cold marble floors and polished his towering glass windows, the girl who never spoke unless spoken to, who kept her head down and her hands busy. Her name was Maria Alvarez, and she had no idea she was about to be watched, judged, and ultimately change a man's life forever. Act 1. The T-ist Edward had everything: money, mansions, private jets, and a name that made investors tremble and politicians smile. But behind the fortified walls of his estate was a man burdened by loneliness. Since losing his parents in his early 20s and getting betrayed by close friends in business, he trusted no one. People came into his life with a smile and left with a piece of him. So, when his longtime butler retired and recommended a young maid from a humble background, Edward's guard instantly went up. Maria was quiet, hardworking, and invisible. She arrived each day on time, took her wages without a word of complaint, and stayed far away from the lavish things that surrounded her. But something about her calmness stirred Edward's curiosity. So, he devised a test. He left the safe open. Inside, rows of cash, priceless watches, black cards, and contracts that could buy nations. He wanted to know who she truly was when no one was watching. From behind a hidden camera, he watched. Act 2. The CHOIC Maria entered the room, humming a soft tune. She didn't notice the safe at first. Her focus was on the dust gathered along the windowsill. But when she turned, she froze. The door to the safe stood wide open, the contents practically glowing under the chandelier light. She stepped closer. Edward, watching from another room, leaned forward in his chair. She was inches away now. Her hand reached out, not to take, but to close the safe. But then she stopped. She looked around the room, seemingly torn. And then, she did something that took Edward by surprise. She sat down. On the floor, in front of the safe, she pulled out a worn-out notebook from her cleaning cart and began to write. Her lips moved silently as she read the words aloud to herself. Then, she placed the notebook back into the cart, finished closing the safe gently, and left the room without touching a thing. Edward stared at the screen, stunned. What had she written? Act 3. The REVAL. The next morning, Edward summoned her. Maria entered the grand study, nervous. She'd never been called in by the CEO himself. "You were in my office yesterday," Edward began. Maria lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir. You saw the safe?" She nodded slowly. "You didn't take anything." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because it wasn't mine." Silence. "But you sat down. You wrote something. What was it?" Maria looked up, surprised. "You saw that?" Edward nodded. "What were you writing?" Maria looked embarrassed. "It's something I do when I feel tempted. I write down what I would buy if I had that money. Then I close the book, remind myself I'm more than what I can buy, and I go on with my day." Edward sat back, floored. "May I read it?" he asked. She pulled the notebook from her apron, hesitated, then handed it over. He flipped through the pages. There were no wild fantasies, no shopping sprees, or private jets. Just simple dreams. A small bakery with yellow curtains. An apartment where sunlight reached every room. Money to pay off her younger brother's medical debt. A garden. A life with peace. Tears prickled Edward's eyes, something he hadn't felt in decades. He dismissed her gently and sat there long after she left, notebook in hand, heart suddenly aching. Act 4. The GIFT. Over the next few weeks, Edward observed Maria more closely. He learned she took 2 buses to reach his estate, and she volunteered at a shelter on weekends, that she often skipped lunch so she could send more money back home. She was poor but rich in soul, and he, with all his millions, had never felt poorer in comparison. One day, she arrived to find a white envelope taped to her cleaning cart. Inside was a letter. "Maria, you passed a test I never told you you were taking. But more importantly, you passed. A test I didn't even know I needed to witness. There's a small bakery on 5th and Main keys are inside. It's yours, the apartment above it. That too. Your brother's bills have been paid in full. The rest you'll find in the trust account listed below. But more than the money, I hope you'll accept one more thing, my thanks. You reminded me what integrity looks like, what honesty sounds like, what humanity feels like." Edward Kane. Maria broke down in tears right there in the hallway. She didn't know cameras were still rolling, capturing her genuine reaction, which Edward would later watch over and over, unable to stop the lump in his throat each time. A CT5. The new Eliafi Maria's Bakery opened 6 months later. The first customer? Edward Kane got in a crisp suit, but with softer eyes than before. He sat at the corner table every morning, sipping coffee, watching Maria laugh with her customers, beam at her fresh pastries, and greet every visitor with a joy he had never known. Before one morning, Maria brought him his usual coffee, along with a fresh croissant. "You've come here every day." She smiled. "Don't you have billion-dollar deals to make?" Edward chuckled. "Turns out, watching people live honestly is the best deal I've ever made." They both smiled, the kind of smile that speaks to healing, to growth, to connection. And for the first time in decades, Edward didn't feel alone. The message: temptation reveals who you are. Integrity shapes who you become. And sometimes, the person with the least has the most to give. In a world chasing wealth, be the one who guards character. And you never know. You might just awaken the heart of someone who thought they had everything except trust.